What advice can you give to students that want to gain experience while they're in college? And also, what about those people who've graduated and are thinking like, hey, these entry-level jobs are asking for 3 years of experience, but I don't have anything to show. So what advice do you have in your journey you took to showcase all that and build that experience?
So there's a few things that CS students can do while they're in college. And you're right, like when they go to apply to these entry-level jobs, they're asking for 2-3 years of experience, which someone who's still in college may not have that. What a lot of students don't realize is that they have that work experience already. And that work may not be like professional work, it may just be like classwork, but that goes a long way. So all CS students out there that are watching, like they've all done, different class projects. Some classes are even like totally project based. So like the entire semester they'll be working on. So now it's just a matter of communicating that project, right? Like literally like advertising that project. How do I advertise that on my resume? And then how does that catch the attention of recruiters?
So Zohaib, let's talk about your story. What was your journey throughout college like? What are the things you did? And how did you build that classwork and project experience that you were able to list later down the line and be able to communicate that with your recruiters and your future employers? So tell me about your story. What did you do?
I want to give an example of the class projects, right? So in my case, I went to James Madison University, and there we have this interdisciplinary program called X Labs. So there's people from different technical majors who take that class, and you're given a role based on whatever your expertise is whatever you're looking to do. So in this specific X Labs class, it was for an autonomous vehicle. We had people from engineering, we had people from CS, we had people from ISAT.
Integrated Science and Technology?
Yeah, ISAT is Integrated Science and Technology. That's actually what I did, but the role that I was put on with a group of students.
So this is not just computer science students or engineer students. So we've got all these different majors that are coming together into one class with different backgrounds and different majors.
Right.
And then they're working on this, they're working in a class, working on projects together.
Okay. Right. So the overall project was, for our class, was to take this golf cart basically and make it drive itself. So there's a lot that goes into it, right? The team that I was on, we were focused on building out an interface that would actually control the car, would tell it what to do. So for example, you press this button and it would take the car to this destination on the map. You would press this button and it would stop the car. You would press maybe the green button and it would go. So that's what our team was responsible. My role specifically was to build out the interface and work with one of our lead students on our team to assist them in building that interface. So that already is a huge project. I mean, and it really doesn't matter like what level, like if it's a super high level project or very like basic class project, it's still a project that you worked on in school. You had to work on a team. You had to figure out what your role was. You had to figure out how to work with your team and how to work with the other teams, how to communicate all these technical features, all this technical work to maybe people on your team or on other teams that are maybe not as technical.
So you're already doing all these things that recruiters and companies are looking for. You just don't know you're doing it.
Right.
So it's like because in real life, you're literally doing the same thing. You're put on big teams, you're working on different components, and at the end, this big system comes together to make this one big application program or entire something like an autonomous vehicle or anything like that. Each individual has its own responsibility, and it involves everything with communication, development, designing, interfacing with integrating different technologies together. So you're already doing that, but instead of just saying I coded the interface.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you want to be able to really. It just comes back to like, how do I take all this technical jargon, right? And how do I communicate this to a recruiter or really anyone that's looking at your resume, right? You want to be able to list all those different technical, applications that you use, all the different technologies that you used. A lot of the times these recruiters they'll understand that like, okay, we're looking for 1, 2, 3, XYZ technologies. React, Node, Express. These are the things that they're looking for example. Once you tell them like, hey, I used these technologies and I use them in this way to build out X project, that's really the way to communicate to recruiters like, hey, these are my projects, this is what I worked on, this is how I worked with my team, this is how I worked with other teams.
One thing that I notice a lot now that I've worked with lots of different clients and businesses and I'm manager of different technical folks on my team, one thing that I constantly see technical people struggle with, especially earlier on in their career, is they get focused on the technical sides of things. Like I built stuff in React or I did JavaScript, things like that. But they don't know how to communicate the overall why. Like why did you code it?
Right. Yeah. So really at the end of the day, it comes down to what purpose does that project serve? What are the results? What's the outcome?
Yeah, what problem you were trying to solve?
Exactly. What's the purpose of all this? And then you really want to be able to show this recruiter or again anyone that's looking at your resume, this project that you've worked on, this application, is it hosted somewhere? Did you host it? Is it live? Are people using it right now? Are you using it right now?
How many people did it impact? Sometimes, how many users are out there, right? Sometimes, okay, like 3 people are using it, or is it like 10,000 people are using this application? It is impacting their lives. It has changed. It has transformed their lives. And all of that stuff impacts what the recruiters want to hear and say, And that's how the big companies communicate too, right? Like when they've built a system, well, maybe you spent $1 million building a system, but did it change one person's life?
Exactly.
Or did it change a million people's lives?
Right. Yeah, you want to find out what is the application of all this, even if it's not live. And like a local business can use this application that I built out to do just that, keep track of their sales.
So a lot of times when we're building something in college, or even we might just be prototyping, right? It's not a complete product that anyone is already using. It's something where a problem we're trying to solve could be what a business, a local restaurant might want, or they don't know what they want yet. So we're building as a prototype and showing like, hey, if you use this product, if you use the software that I just built, and this is going to increase the number of sales you have. So sometimes as students, we just need to be able to think through what the use case scenarios might be. And then you can communicate that with the recruiters,
right?
And say, this software that I've built has the potential to be a great asset to restaurants or small businesses.
Exactly. Which actually leads me to my next point. So we mentioned that your class projects are, they're there, you've done them. It's just a matter of communicating them. Now it's a matter of like personal projects as well. And the reason I said we're leading into that is because one of the things that a lot of CS students can do is, what kind of personal projects have you worked on? Because in this field, as I'm sure they already know, there's a lot of self-teaching involved. You can go to class, do all your classwork, get the grades that you need, and that's fine. What you'll learn very early in your college career is that a lot of these technologies that you're learning in class, a lot of stuff you're having to teach yourself. It's not just going by the textbook. It's like, debugging stuff, right? I came across this error. I need to Google it. I need to figure out what the error means. How do I resolve it? And so, which actually leads me into my next point, which is, where to start with these personal projects. It can be literally anything. You can start with like beginner level stuff, something like a to-do list, where it has like the very basic CRUD application where you can create something. So you can create something and you should be able to read it. If you made something on some item on that list, you should be able to see it on the screen. You should be able to update it. You should be able to delete it. You should be able to use those same features in a slightly more advanced site, like an online forum for any topic really. And you can just keep it as simple as like going around to your local pizza shop or something and asking them, hey, do you guys have a site or something that people can look at on their phone? Maybe it's a menu. It has maybe like an about me or that has like the location, hours, so that they don't have to call and ask and like, are you guys open, or do you guys have this type of pizza? What you'll realize is that a lot of these local businesses, they don't have live websites.
And everyone needs a website, man.
Everyone needs a website, exactly, because just about everyone has a smartphone, right? And what's more accessible than being able to take your phone out and looking up Hamza's Pizzeria?
Yeah, so find your favorite restaurant or any small business that you like or go to that you know about. And sometimes, and I've gone to places and I've done that exactly. I'm like, hey, I was trying to find your information, but I couldn't find a website for you. And so they might not be thinking about it, but by telling them like, I'm a potential user, I had to track you down. So imagine how many people are not finding you because you don't have a website.
Right.
Or if you do have a website, how outdated it might be, or from the 90s it might be, right? And what kind of improvements that they need to have, and what kind of features it needs to have. And earlier you were telling me about how one of the things it can do is potentially integrating it with another service.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can look into, so you can start small, right? Maybe just display the menu, just display the location, the hours. And these are really simple things. Like once you really get not even getting the hang of it, it's just like, it's literally just displaying items on the screen, like small little components, right? Okay. So, build out something small, show them that MVP, that minimum viable product, right? That like, hey, look, this site, this is possible. And then right there, you found yourself a potential client. And then over time, you can figure out okay, how can I implement different features? How can I implement different services? What can we do for, deliveries? You can even figure out how you can get some hardware in there. So maybe the delivery guy has some kind of tracker, and that tracker is communicating with the site in real time. People can see in real time where that driver's headed.
Getting into IoT arena now.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of these CS programs, there are classes that talk about IoT related projects.
Hey, if I see that as a manager or recruiter, a student has IoT experience, I'll be like, oh my God, dude,
exactly.
When can you start? Yeah.
Yeah. And doing all this stuff with this client that you have, right? Because this is your client now. This counts as work experience.
It does, yeah.
You are for example, you are the developer for Hamza's Pizzeria, right? Mm-hmm. That's work experience right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you can build something once, especially if it's the 80% of the site is the same for all these different businesses, right?
Right.
You just need to go in and change the name, color scheme.
Exactly.
Some of the
what we have there is a basic skeleton now. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you can call it a basic skeleton, or if you've implemented tons of these different features, that's a very advanced skeleton there, right?
Yeah.
So take it to Hamza's Pizzeria, take it to the one across. It's like you said, it's just a matter of changing around the colors, changing around the logo, the basic information about that establishment.
And you know what we call that on our resume? We call that reusable assets.
Exactly.
So just put fancy words to things and buzzwords,
yeah.
And people will eat it up, man.
Oh yeah, big time.
Now Zohaib, I know you've done a ton of work. I mean, when you were still a junior in college, I know you had already so much experience. So tell me about what you did throughout this time. Let's say when you started in college, what are all the side projects you did and the side jobs you did that got you all this experience? And what are some of those things that other people can do? But tell me more about you from your story. What did you do?
To build my technical expertise, where I really started there was an internship opportunity that I came across at our one of the job fairs at our school. It was for a company that was called Chato Labs at the time. They're called Generate Impact now. Basically, they were looking for interns to eventually bring on as full-time developers. And I had come across this opportunity. I was like, okay, you know what? I really got to work at this. This is a perfect opportunity. It was downtown. I could literally just drive there right after class, and it was perfect. So what his requirements for me were, I want you to build out a project and then, just present it to me. And I'd never worked on my own personal side project at this point. So I had to just do a little bit of research. He had told me to pick these different technologies, use whatever combination of them. What I decided to go with was the standard MERN project. So MERN standing for MongoDB, Express, React, Node. This was a combination of different technologies that you would use as a database on the front end, on the back end. And the purpose of this was to build a very basic chat application. So this also used a package called Socket.io, right? Right, so the purpose of this project was to figure out like, okay, how can I communicate with Hamza over here over this application? So I spent basically that entire semester learning how to use these technologies and how to build out this application. And then it was just a matter of presenting it to him, which he liked it. And then, he brought me on board as an intern. That's really where I learned like the bulk of all this technical work.
So here you were presented an opportunity to work an internship, but you had to prove yourself. You had to go out there and learn all these skills on your own time, not get paid for it, and showcase these skills to get a job, right? Get an internship.
Exactly.
Which is essentially what a real job, like after internship, but a full-time job also looks like. They just want to see, did you put in the work to learn what needed to be learned?
Exactly, yeah.
Right? And you went out there while you were still in college, doing your full-time school, and then you were learning this on the side to build something real, something that can be showcased, something that solves a problem, right? And then that's how you gained all these skills. And when you get a job at this particular company, it's not like you're building the same chat app again. You're just using what you learned through this process, potentially somewhat similar technologies, but also additional technologies. And it's the ability to learn new things, new skills, right? That's what people want to see.
Exactly. They want to see, okay, you acquired a certain set of skills doing this project over here. Now, can you translate those same skills into our work, into our real life work?
Yeah, and sometimes it's not only about what technology you learn. Maybe I learned Java in school, but I never learned Python, right? But what companies really want to see is like, okay, yeah, you learned Java, but I need you to learn JavaScript, or I need
totally
you totally different,
yeah.
Right? So you can't translate the whole skill over, but you can translate like, okay, I was able to learn one thing. Now can I learn this new thing? Because every few years and 5 years, technology is completely different, right? So we didn't have cloud when I was in college. We didn't. I mean, AWS was just coming out, very, very small, but it's not mainstream. Now you need to know cloud.
Exactly. Yeah. So now DevOps is its own its own field now. It's its own set of like skills where recruiters, teams are this is stuff that they're looking for, because it's all a matter of like, okay, how can we get our entire infrastructure into the cloud?
So now you got the internship, you had some experience. After that, but you were still in college. So what happened after that? What side projects or other work opportunities did you have?
Yeah, so the skills that I acquired through my internship, super useful for me. One thing that I worked on was a car dealership website for a local car dealership. Basically, I took whatever needs that this person had and translated them into a site, right? So there's a whole aspect of design that goes into it, translating whatever that person's needs were onto the site. What does that UI and UX look like? What is that user interface, right? What is the user experiencing while they're using this application?
How hard is it for me to use the website, right? Like
exactly. Once I get to the site, okay, how can I get to a list of all the cars? How can I find out where this place is located? Can I see pictures of the cars? Yeah. Can I see their prices? All the relevant information that I need.
So what you're telling me is, doesn't matter what's under the hood, right?
Right.
What technology you're using, what people are implementing underneath, whether it's React.js or like some other libraries, whatever frameworks you're using, right? What the user sees, what the user experiences is what matters the most at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yeah, you could be using the most advanced, just the coolest stuff out there. But if it's not getting the user like what they need in just 2 seconds, that technology is obsolete.
Or if it takes too many clicks.
If it takes a user more than like 2 or 3 clicks to get to, for example, see the list of cars, I mean, they don't want to use that site anymore. They have to rely on, I have to actually go to the place to see the cars. I should be able to just see it from my phone.
Yeah, and that's something really big companies specialize in, like Amazon, for example. Like I have buy with one click now, right?
Right.
Their whole thing is about taking the friction out of making that purchase. So if I was a business owner, if I was a car dealership owner, and I could care less what technology you have, what skills you have for you could be like the latest cloud guru, whatever. But if my customer can't see the car, if my customer can't buy the car, if it's not getting me the sales that I need, I don't care what technology is underneath, right? And that is a very important thing to communicate, that you understand the business need and the functionality and the design aspect and the implementation, and how smooth all of that process is. Does it do what I needed to do at the end of the day?
Exactly.
Technology ultimately only supports the business needs, right? It's not the means. It's just getting there.
Right. Yeah. You know, like you said, my client doesn't care about what technologies I'm using. As long as I can get them those sales, as long as I can get them those customers.
So similar to what the pizza example you were saying, you actually found a car dealership to work with, and you built them an application.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Cool. So you were getting some real deal experience, and you were able to showcase, and you learned a lot, not just about coding, but also about designing.
Right, designing, and one aspect of all this that a lot of people don't think about is how to work with that customer, right? Figuring out what their needs are. And a lot of times the customer doesn't exactly know what they need either. They never know, okay. Yeah, so you want to figure out like, okay, hey, what is the main purpose of this project that I've taken on? In my case, it was they want the customers to be able to see what the inventory looks like, what kind of cars do you have, how much do they cost, what year are they, what are the mileage, stuff like that. And then it's like, okay, well, I have all that information. Now, how can I make the customer's experience as smooth as possible?
You went out there and you gathered requirements, right? Essentially, because and we have other roles for that too, which is the business requirements. We have business analysts and other kinds of tech leads who kind of help gather the requirements. So you're already building all these skills. You may not even know that you need to put that on your resume.
Exactly. And so that's where like all this comes together, right? How can I communicate all this, all these different roles that I played, all this work that I did? How can I narrow it down into maybe like 2 or 3 bullet points on my resume? How can I communicate that to my recruiter? How can I tell them, hey, this is what I did. These are the technologies that I used. This was the end result. This was the impact.
And these are the techniques I used for requirements gathering, right? Maybe I interviewed my clients. I observed their existing process. I analyzed those requirements, right? And I saw they might have been asking for the moon, but you were like, well, we can't get there, but we can do this other thing instead. We can get you this far too. They're like, oh yeah, of course, that's all I really wanted, but I just didn't know how to say it, right? Like
exactly, yeah. So that's the other thing, right? Like it's not just that you fulfilled all this technical work. You did actually play these other roles, especially if it's something that you're doing on your own. You play that role of a business analyst. You play that role of a consultant.
You architected that whole solution together.
Exactly, and that's a solutions architect.
Yeah. So it's amazing stuff that you're already doing by taking on these personal projects, and you just don't even know to talk about it. So it's really important that you look into all these aspects of a systems development lifecycle, because then you can pick out that, hey, I went through this whole cycle of things, and I did all these things.
Right.
And because essentially when you get to a real job, they're gonna ask you about system development lifecycle or software development lifecycle, right? And you need to be able to speak through all these different things that you did to build that end product.
Right. You have to be able to communicate that, what is the purpose of all this? What is it that we're trying to achieve? Well, this is what we're trying to achieve. These are the different steps we can take. And then this would be the end result. So once you have all of your projects ready to go, now it's time to showcase them. And a great way to do this is by making a portfolio and hosting all of your stuff there, or having links to all those different projects from that portfolio. And it's really easy to get started on this sort of stuff. There's tons of different templates online that you can use, and they're super easy to use. They're a great way for beginners to get started making their portfolios. It's all like, written out code for you already, so you just need to make a few modifications, And then you can push all that to GitHub, which is a source control service. And if all of your code is made public, then you can actually, let all these different recruiters or whoever you want to be able to see your projects and see your work history, see what you're capable of. They'll be able to actually go in and see your code and say, oh wow, X person actually was able to do all this logic, all these different features. So one way that I showcase my personal projects and even my professional work is on my portfolio. I have links to those live websites. While I'm working on my projects, as I'm coding away, I'll occasionally commit that code to GitHub and push that there. So as a way of backing it up. And then when it's time to actually host it somewhere, then I have to push that code onto a service like Heroku or AWS. Once my website is live and anyone in the world can see it, then I'll post a link to it from my portfolio. So what I like to do is just attach like a screenshot of it and then the name of whatever that website is, and then maybe like a short description.
So to put it all together, Zohaib, one thing that I remember when you were still in college, you had done your internship. I was looking at your resume and I saw you had listed all these technical things. Basically, it looked like a list of your job responsibilities, right? But it didn't read into the format that we're talking about here. So I would urge anybody, as the students, or if you've already graduated and you have a resume out there, go back to your resume and look through. Does your resume look like a bullet point list of your job responsibilities? If that's the case, start over, right?
Yeah.
Or take that and then convert it into what we just discussed here. Add more to it if you need to, like all the different analysis and the requirements things we just talked about. But also go back and look at, okay, fine, you use React.js to build something. What was the impact of it? What was the end product? What system did you build? That's what matters, right? And you could have done it, like no one is saying you have to do it all on your own, right? Like you could say, I worked on a team and we used this technology to build that. And this is what was the...
And if anything, it's great that you're mentioning that you worked on a team, right? Because then that adds that extra skill of knowing what your role is, knowing how you fit on the team, knowing how to work with that team, right? 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get hired as a lone wolf developer or anything like that. You're very likely going to be working on a team. You're going to have a tech lead. You're going to have more senior engineers on your team. You will probably be, starting out just that entry level, that junior developer. You want to know how to work with all those different people.
Absolutely. And I think one of the really important types of interviews that all these companies use now is behavioral interviews. And if you've never worked on a team, then you can't really answer those behavioral interviews.
Exactly.
Right? They're constantly asking you, tell me about a time when you ran into a situation on a project and you had a conflict with your classmate or another person. How did you resolve it, right? So you have to talk about the situation you were in and what was the actions you took, and what was the result of it. You have to talk about this whole stuff. So be thinking about that too while you are going through these projects together on your internship. Think about those situations. Sometimes if you get in a conflict, it could be a good thing because it's a story you can tell in your interview. But do it the right way.
Right. Yeah, work through it the right way.
Yeah,
exactly.
Don't trash your colleagues.
Yeah, don't do that.
No one wants to work with anyone like that, right?
Yeah, you'll never get hired.
So thank you for telling us all this great information, Zohaib. And we can do all of these things, but one of the things is networking.
Exactly.
Right? So in our next video, we're going to talk about networking and why it's so important and how to do it. Because a lot of times as technical folks, we are very kind of reserved, or we like to do our, maybe shy to talk to different people, strangers, right? So we're going to talk about how to network. So I'm going to link that video up top. So make sure you check that out. And hey, keep on being awesome. Great.
Awesome.
Good job, bro.
Man, that is so hard. How do you do this?
Good. I'm just going to go ahead and...
Don't do it like IBC.
I know. What do you think?
Before I answer that, I'm going to have another sip.
Let's do it.
It's like the right amount of that cream. You know what I mean?
It's perfect, man. I've tried a lot of different brands, but IBC is the best cream soda there is.
By far. It's probably terrible for my throat, but it's so good. I can't resist.
I think it's great for your throat.
Is it? Oh, for the sponsorship.
Yeah, for the sponsorship.